Hey Clashers, my two best defending bases from this current Legend season are linked down below, but even more important, I will share with you why I built them the way I did, how I deployed those traps, and what the thinking behind that was. So let's dive into the first base, and I will explain exactly how you can properly build your own bases. And it seems like that currently the best performing base style are those isolated town hall compartments with then having a ring of defense around it, because we try to concentrate on defending root riders. And that is the important thing for legend-based building. You're trying to defend one specific strategy, and that's pretty much it. You cannot defend multiple strategies. That's currently in the meta pretty much impossible. So you're just picking the most common one, which is the Royal German Charge root riders. And with this setup, it's really tricky to get the root riders path into the core. So the Town Hall, that is the only strength pretty much of the Town Hall 17 building. That's the range. Take a look at that. All of this entire ring of defenses is getting covered. And over time, even the Town Hall 17 building can deal quite some damage. But overall, in Town Hall 17, damage is missing. So we're relying on at least one Rage Tower, possibly even two. Without a Rage Tower, you're going to miss out on damage, and any good player is just going to overpower your base, and it's going to be pretty frustrating. So you have to use at least one Rage. I know this is going to make fireball attacks on your base typically really easy, but as I said earlier, we're trying to defend root riders, one strategy, and not more or less, because this won't work. This is obviously going to be changed in the future, because Fireball is going to get an indirect nerf, because if defense are dealing more damage, which they will with the battle modifiers in the future Legend rework, then you don't need the Rage Towers. So things are going to spread out more, like with the tournaments. Like if you're watching tournaments, you will only see Poison Towers. And that's going to be the future of base building for then the Legendary work, which means way less Fireball value, which is an indirect Fireball nerf. But let's get back to the current meta, to the current base. So we have now this Rage Tower area, which is supposed to deal as much damage as possible. But the tricky part here is, how do we defend that from the Royal German Charge? And this is now where defensive pathing is coming into. We have this layer of defense around the outside and right behind non-defensive buildings, which means it makes it kind of tricky for the Royal German to even get to the Rage Tower. Which means, if someone's starting over here, the Royal German going for the Wizard Tower, to the Bomb Tower, after that to this Bomb Tower, and then if you want to have it like walk in, you typically need to invest buildings over here, especially if there's a Tesla behind the Bomb Tower, for example. Which means you're investing like one or even two invis over here. You have to use a third one to really push the Royal Champion in. And then you have maybe 2 or 3 of those invis spells left, because typically you have like 5 to 6 invis spells with the Royal German Charge Root Rider attack. And this won't be enough to completely take down those deeper defenses. And with that, you cannot interrupt the ring. And as we talked about earlier, the pathing of defense is all what matters when you're attacking with Root Riders. So this is not really an option. Now the question is, where could possibly the attacker interrupt this ring? Because we're working with the non-defensive buildings quite a bit, which means the Royal Champion won't go there. If you deploy her here, she would go to the outside and enter into those compartments. Or for example, which looks quite nice as well, if she's going over here, she's going for those defenses right after. But those are then the points which you try to bait and predict. And if you go without the scout mode, you see the traps now. And those are the exact entries we predicted. This like bouncing between the buildings and then going inside is exactly one of the obvious entries, or at least for me at that point was the obvious entry. And especially because of this like little dead zone behind the Rico cannon, the Royal Champion will always walk like this. But if we have the Tesla over here, she would actually go to the outside. I will have as well a quick replay, which you can see here right now on your screen, how the exact pathing is. And the key thing here is that you have 4 giant bombs, 4 small bombs to take down the Fox on this wave. This is the amount of things you need to take down the Fox if the attacker is perfect with the invisibility spells, which is really frustrating. I mean, there's so many traps just to take down the Fox. Luckily, this is going to be easier in the future to take the Fox out because of the Spring Trap rework. So finally, Spring Traps are then dealing damage, which means the Fox is going to go down way easier, which is quite nice. But currently, we are relying on those things, and especially the Tesla are a really important tool to pretty much control the pathing. But something which is even more important, maybe, is the choice of outside buildings. And I'm talking about those buildings right here, for example. Because it might sound weird, but actually those are the 4 buildings with the least amount of hit points. And you have just seen that the Fox was not staying behind because the Dark Spare Factory was going down from the from the aura, from the electro aura, and this means the royal champion and the fox always stayed close, so the fox triggered out of those traps. And this is where things get complicated, where you might see why not many people are doing base building videos. This is just really nerdy stuff where you need to know hit points of outside buildings to know when they're going down, when you can deploy the giant bomb so the fox with the royal champion is getting hit. Yeah, that's pretty much it. On this far right side, it's not working 100%. Like on this one, this sometimes is not going down right away. It kind of depends. Like if the fox is attacking the spare factory, then the bait works. If the fox is attacking the builder hut, then it does not work. I have a really quick replay again for you guys where it's really shown, hopefully, quite a nice way. The fox is attacking, not the spare factory, so the fox staying behind. The first giant bomb, for example, is missed. So it's tricky. It is not easy to place those bombs properly and the traps in general properly, but you need a lot of testing to make this work, and as well a lot of like game knowledge to know what are the buildings to place where, because depending on that, those traps are working or they are not because of the hit points of those outside defenses, or like not even defenses, like the outside regular buildings. So there's a lot of stuff you have to consider within the overall base building things and stuff. But let's talk about one more quick thing, and that is, for example, the black mines. I mean, black mines typically just like within this inner ring, because this typically is where the healers are. But I will be honest, in the age, or like in the time of the troop thrower, healers a lot of times won't go down, and that is really frustrating. But hey, this is the one thing which I guess you cannot really change. But hey, this is the first base. Let's move over to the second base and everything which I was able to learn, because over this entire season I have built already more than 20 bases by now. Most of them were like I used it one day and switched away right away, because I'm still trying to learn as well a lot of things. I'm just trying to share as well those things, my learnings within those videos here, so you don't have to do the same mistakes and you're learning a lot, because those bases, I would assume they are going to defend maybe up to 5,600, maybe up to 5,700 trophies, but after that, do not use them. Do not use them. This is mostly for you to teach you about base building and things you can consider when building your own bases, or even more importantly, trapping your own bases, because traps right now are the most important thing in the game, because you really have to bait those royal champion charges if you want to defend. But let's move on to the second base. And whenever I see this base, the one thing which triggers me the most is I don't know why I did not deploy why didn't I do this? Well, I will just share you the base in the version which I used it. If I would be you and you copy the base, do this switch. I mean, I just misplaced it because now it's reachable from the arch screen with the whatever. Okay, let's move on. So, the next thing is on this one, again, we have the rage tower. This time around, we have the poison tower away from it. I was considering a second rage tower, but yeah, I'm not sure. At least one rage is what is needed. Again, we have this outside layer of defenses to make sure that the pathing into the rage tower is as annoying as possible, or that you need to force invis spells to redirect. But the most common, or like the most obvious entries might be something on this left side, but we have the pathing set pretty easily, so it doesn't really look that great. And as well with the Giga Bomb, people would expect a lot of traps over here, so that's why pretty much no one used this entry. But the other obvious thing is where people would use this entry, or obviously on the other side as well. Then we have a lot of non-defensive buildings around here, which means you cannot target those defenses right here right away. Some people tried to use like an invis early on those two buildings to get the royal champion to the expo. But if we just now switch to the non-trap view, you can see I on at least once I tried to predict that with some Tesla to make sure that the royal champion is like not really getting to the expo and you have to invest another invis, so that works. But the biggest bait on this one is really this area right here. And this is where there's no buildings on this side or on this one on the other side, because the fox needs to stay close to the royal champion. And again, we have those buildings on the outside which have the least amount of hit points. And as well, I have a Tesla to make sure that even if you deploy the royal champ right here, she's going to this wizard tower. Sometimes she came back, but dodged a couple of traps. This is why I deployed the Tesla, because with this Tesla, the traps are always getting triggered. And the fox won't get past this line. Like, it's pretty much impossible, except someone's triggering a giant bomb on the outside with like a barbarian or something, which so far no one did. But if you take a look at this quick replay here, or like at this quick attack here, You can see the fox always goes down, which is really, really great for the bait overall. And as I said, I was using this base multiple days. It worked really, really nice, and it was everywhere. But I have seen traps. Some of those base copying people, I know why they're copying bases, because their base building skills are sometimes I feel like a newborn would be better. But hey, doesn't matter. Enough trash talking. Let's get back to the base, because there's some more things which I've learned from base number 1 to base number 2. And I want to give a big shout out over here to Temper, for example, for the red mines. Because by now, with the troop thrower, with Sneezy, red mines are typically never hitting those healers. But something you can do when you're predicting entries. So for example, I predicted, because of red-handed, like most people are right-handed, not right-handed. So most people would use this entry, and then right after it, they're going from over here with the Root Riders, because you want to have the Rage Shower on the back end of an attack because of the Overgrowth spell. I use 4 red mines over here, because 4 red mines are immediately taking down loons. And typically all people, or at least the mediocre good people, are typically all using their test loons together, which means the test loons are taken care of right away. So they can't even trigger that black mine, for example. This might be the first black mine, which is then getting triggered by the troop thrower, by the first loons which are getting thrown in. But this means the first black mine is always going to hit the healers. So small things like that can be used. Since we have 7 red mines, it's like group of 4 and group of 3, depending on how likely those entries are. But this was, for example, another thing which I learned from base number 1 to base number 2. So as I said earlier, I'm trying out different stuff as well. I'm not one of those base builders who are just copying working bases from others and like changing some buildings and then calling themselves a base builder. I'm just trying to really try as well new stuff. And this is why overall I've built over 20 bases this season. And I would say 15 out of those were pretty bad because I tried new stuff. It did not work. And yeah, this is why I'm sharing like the best ones in this video here. And yeah, back to the attack. As I said earlier, this was the most likely entry. So this is what the pathing looks like. This is why the tornado trap is over here as well, because it keeps everything inside that range of the splash defenses, which we have right here, and make sure the Rage Shower can really like get some work in. And then we have as well the Minion Prince and as well the Barbarian King to really stall things even further. And that's pretty much the concept, the thinking right here with the base. And yeah, otherwise, I think we have talked about pretty much most of the stuff already. With the Black Mines again, this inner ring again, even though I feel like, as I said earlier, most of them are not really getting triggered with the healers. It's really frustrating with those troop throwers, but it is what it is. And yeah, those were the 2 best bases which I've used so far this season. Feel free to copy them. As I said earlier as well, I would not recommend them using them above 5, 6, 5, 7 trophies. Below that should be quite easily to be used because they shouldn't be as popular on those trophy ranges. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching the video. Let me know if you would like to see future base building videos like this as well. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys back tomorrow. Until then, see ya and bye-bye.